Hi, I'm Christina Nguyen. I'm the Director of Communications here at Austin ISD, and so I'll just take you through a little bit of the beginning of the presentation, and then Matthias should be here shortly. So here is the agenda. We just had our principal welcome, and we'll go through some review of the meeting norms and the purpose. We know these are really difficult conversations, and a lot has been going on. A lot of new ideas have come about, and so that's why we're really here to hear that feedback and make sure that any decision we make in that release plan on Friday is inclusive of the voices by everyone affected. And so we will provide that overview of the campus-specific proposed changes, and then really the majority of this time is going to be Q&A with the superintendent, and we also have our assistant superintendent of elementary schools, Jennifer Pace over here, and we have the executive director, Sandra McWilliams. And so I will work to get y'all to that Q&A as quickly as I can. So here are the meeting norms. We have visited many campuses and have shared these norms with them. So again, acknowledging that these are not easy conversations, but we really want to focus together on like hearing each other, hearing your feedback, and then figuring out how we can incorporate that into the plan. Honor each other's time to make sure that we are able to get as many questions as possible. Like, we would love if you could try to limit to 1 minute to make sure that we can get your questions answered and we can get as many questions answered in this time. Honor each other, so making sure that we're respectful, honor the process. Again, like, we will do our best to answer every single question. There may be answers that we don't have yet or we're still working through. I think a lot of that is like with our transition plans that will need to be continued to work on. And so just making sure that we honor the process, and then intent and impact, honoring the space and voice, staying solution oriented, and then embracing that transparency and empathy. And that goes back down to the difficult conversations. Like, we all care about the students here in Austin ISD, and I think if we can all come to it with that understanding, it'll be very helpful. And those are the norms in Spanish. So again, we are here to respond to questions via the comment card. Your principal did give us some of your questions already, so we can answer them. Again, gain that shared understanding of the proposed changes, and then figure out how we can incorporate that ahead of the final document that will be posted Friday and then voted on by the board on Thursday next week. Okay, so at the center of this whole plan is to ensure every family has access to an excellent neighborhood school. We know we have amazing schools in Austin, and we want to be sure that every student has access to that. And so really we are trying with this plan to get our students in the best possible learning environments. Okay. So the plan that we're here to talk about today is, as many of y'all may have heard on October 3rd, when we released the initial plan, we talked about having Oak Springs close. Here's our superintendent. I was just starting to talk about the plan, but I don't know if you want to take over or you want me to keep going?
Yeah, I can talk about it.
Here, why don't you?
So I apologize for being late. I'm running, so appreciate your grace. As Christina was saying, the plan as originally developed by the administration included Oak Springs moving fully into Blackshear. One of the things that we were trying to address as part of this plan, and forgive me if it's already been said, were kind of several things. You talk about kind of feeder pattern alignment, you talk about those things, okay. Well, one of the things that we had to absolutely consider were turnaround plans in those schools that had accumulated a series of unacceptable accountability ratings. And in this case, we know that there's been lots of great work in many of our schools, but there's been changes in accountability. There's been, challenges with how the school district supports our schools. and ultimately we need to break these accountability chains. And there are only a few ways in which you can break these. The state of Texas says that you have 6 ways that you can do it. Accountability kind of turnaround plans are built after a second year. So let's say that a school receives an F and then another F. Then after the second consecutive F, they have to develop a turnaround plan. Typically, in a kind of more familiar kind of setting, you would have a year to create the plan, and then in year 3, you would implement that plan, and then you would have 2 years to ensure that you broke the accountability chain, and that means getting a C or better. What happened in this year is that because of lawsuits in the state of Texas, we had 23 accountability drop or get released in the spring of this year, and then we had 24 and 25 drop on the exact same day on August 15th. And so within 5 months, we had 3 years of ratings hit. And so what occurred is a compression of all these plans having to be submitted. So lots of schools did not have the ability to actually build a 2-year turnaround plan, have a year to develop it, and then implement. That was kind of just out the window, right? And that occurred throughout the entire state of Texas. It is happening everywhere, and there are hundreds and hundreds of schools that are kind of in this kind of situation. And so there are 6 different things that you can do to break 6 different strategies that you can use in your turnaround plan. You can reassign the school, which is you take the students and reassign them to an A, B, or C school. You can restart the school. That is, you come in and you have certain requirements for staffing, and you have to prove that the principal had previously demonstrated the ability of turning around a school. That's what we call a district managed restart. You also have a charter partner restart. This is in 1882. This is similar to what we have seen at Mendez. It is a model that we don't really like very much. We prefer to control how we educate our students, but that is an option that you can use. You also have new school or new campus. And this would be taking like a middle school and turning it to an EC8, or turning a middle school into a 6 through 12. Like, you could do that. You also have a school improvement model, which is where you're really being intentional about the supports you're providing, but you're not kind of in a situation where you have to make a more aggressive intervention. And that is really for those schools that you've seen tremendous progress. You're probably year 2, not a year 3. And then lastly, there's just a closure. Like, you can just close the school. And so one of the things that we had to acknowledge is that given where Oak Springs was, we needed to make sure that we were responsive to the turnaround plan. And whenever we do this, we look at, well, which one of these strategies is best for us as a community, as a school district, and one that we know we can actually execute so that we can break the accountability chain. And after going through a lot of analysis, we determined that moving Oak Springs to Blackshear and then having the students combine and providing the supports, additional content interventionists, instructional coaches, those types of supports would allow us to break the accountability chain. So the combined student body would then take the STAR test next year, and then based on those accountability ratings would break Oak Springs chain. So that's how it works. And so that's how we arrived at this solution, this draft plan. I also want to be really, really clear that at the same time we were looking at under enrollment in an area, we were looking at programs, we look at demographics of the student populations to ensure that if we're going to make a disruption, we're really understanding, where we need to provide supports so that we're focusing on our students and doing it in a way that aligns with our values. So that's how we got to the initial draft plan. Since then, as I've been committed to from day one, I absolutely want to make sure that feedback from our community is incorporated into the plan. Everything that we've done, I hope that you would see in our work, whether it's the bond work, the tax rate elections, just how we work in general, we're always trying to incorporate community voice. And one of the things that we heard as we were sharing this plan with our community was that there was a desire to explore having Oak Springs come to Blackshear, have Blackshear and the schools combine, and then at a later date move back to Oak Springs. One of the driving kind of forces, I would say, behind that idea, though it did come to me from community, was the fact that students would end up in a fully modernized facility, right? Which what we know is the way that you educate students now is very different than the way we used to 40, 50, 60, 80 years ago in some cases. And so as of right now, the Oak Springs bond project is paused. You know, as we go through these processes, we have to really think about ensuring that our community investments follow the students. And so if Oak Springs was to close, we would want those dollars to follow the students as they matriculated through the school system. So that's why we paused it. And so we wanted to have a conversation with the Blackshear community after we heard those ideas from others in the collective community to just kind of share with you what was occurring. I also want to be really, really clear that the board vote on next Thursday on the 20th is to reassign the students from Oak Springs to Blackshear. That is still going to be the recommendation, because collectively what we're doing is combining attendance boundaries, right? Where the school resides in that attendance boundary isn't necessarily something the board has to vote on. That is more work of the administration. The board is required by law to approve boundary changes. That's one of their core functions: boundaries, budgets, hiring a superintendent. It's very, very kind of well defined what their kind of purview is. And so I want to be really clear, like, there won't be an answer today, right? We're not going to leave this meeting. There's going to be more conversations, but I wanted to create the space to ensure that all community voice got into the work. We made adjustments if we needed to, but the vote on Thursday, next Thursday, is really to codify the turnaround plan, which includes Oak Springs student population moving to Blackshear. What occurs after that, I would say, needs to get resolved fairly quickly, but isn't required to be incorporated as part of that vote. So I want to be real, kind of, hopefully that makes sense, and I'm happy to clarify. I will say that maybe some trustees or maybe some community members would like it to be part of that vote, but it doesn't have to be. Just so you know, I'm totally transparent about all the things. All right, so I said a lot there. Is there anything you want me to?
No, I think that's good. If we can start with Q&A, I can bring it around. Since I have a wireless mic, you have to stay with the wired mic.
Okay, that's fine.
So if I have any first volunteers, okay. Oh, and sorry, if you can please speak into the mic, because we have interpretation and recording in both English and Spanish.
Hi, my name is Emily Flowers, and we just had a quick question for you. I think one of our main concerns is we have been very excited about welcoming the students from Oak Springs and joining the two schools together and being able to welcome them. And I feel like that takes time and preparation, and we're like ready to go. So we don't want to like sit back and kind of just like wait. Are we welcoming them? Are we not welcoming them? And then I guess another concern is I have heard that Oak Springs is a much smaller school, even when it will be complete. And the woman that talked last time, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting who she was, but I know she mentioned building school camaraderie and just like, I guess, like togetherness and community. Yeah. And if we're combining to then separate again, I don't feel like that's accomplishing that. I feel like kids are going to be building friendships, connecting with teachers, connecting with everyone, and then being divided again.
Yeah, no, great question. So I'm going to try to answer it in a way that I think I heard it, because I may not have heard. I want to make sure I'm answering the right question the right way. So that's fantastic. Like, we want our schools, we're all one big school community. We want our schools to welcome all of our students. I mean, that's exactly how we should be approaching it. My recommendation to the board is going to include Oak Springs coming to Blackshear. That has to occur. There isn't the ability for us to submit a turnaround plan to the state of Texas that will be accepted unless we do that, if that makes any sense. One of the questions that I've been asked is, could Blackshear go to Oak Springs? And the state of Texas would not accept that turnaround plan because from their perspective, you're taking a C school and moving it to a school that hasn't met accountability. So that's a big hard no for the state of Texas, right? And we understand why. Now, when you come together, and just to be clear, we've done this in the past, we want you all to be a combined school. We do not want two schools in two programs in one school, right? These are all our students. We love them. This is one big community. We need to be that way. The time and whatever a future decision is made is important because we want our community to plan together for whatever's next, but plan together, I think, is the most important part. We are not going to ultimately end up with two separate schools. I would not be able to support, Oak Springs coming to Blackshear and then Oak Springs moving back to their building. And one of the main reasons is that collectively in parts of Austin, this is one of those parts, we just have lots of empty seats. And so in an effort to reduce the costs that we have as a system and ensure that every student gets what they need, we have to kind of reduce the number of empty seats we have collectively. Which is why at the end of this, there really needs to be one school. Where it ends up and what it looks like is really going to end up based on the feedback and conversations that we have with you in the community. Regarding the size, so there are different sizes of elementary schools that we have. We have a traditional size, which is about 520 students. We have a larger size, which is about 620, and then we have like a jumbo. I don't know another way to describe it, but this would be like a DOS or maybe a Menchaca, where you're getting 700, 800 kids. Because of where Oak Springs is, they're tightened a little bit because of the way the site is situated. When you think about the back side of the property. But we feel confident that the combined student population will fit in that school. That is not a concern of ours. I've tested it. I've overseen these designs. I'm very confident it'll work. One of the things that we would want to do is to rethink the final design components. So let's say at the end of this, there's an agreement, okay, maybe we want to go back after a couple years because we still have to construct it, right? It's not built yet. What does it need to be? How does it need to be different? The design scheme, the visual arts, and all the work here, what would need to change at that facility to embrace that learning experience? Like, we could do that. We have the ability to do it. How do you honor the legacy of each community? We've done that. We've done that with Norman Sims. Those are two separate campuses that came together. They actually moved together first, and then they moved back into the new home as one combined school. We had it with Metz and Sanchez, where it was a little bit different, where they moved together. They moved back to the new school, but they decided to keep the history of Sanchez and didn't feel collectively that the Metz history needed to move forward with it, where Norman Sims was really clear, like we wanted to have both. So all of that is really worked out with you all. What I would say is, if we were to move forward, depending on what it ended up being, I would reissue contracts to the designer and to the general contractor, have them begin to engage with the collective community to make the refinements necessary so that it welcomes the whole. And that can look whatever it needs to look like. So we have that ability. It's unique. The other thing that comes up is what would happen to the Blackshear building, because I want to be honest. Like, one of the reasons that we moved this way opposed to the other way or do a restart was because of the historic nature of Blackshear. Right? It's a historic building. Like it's a historic site, for many reasons. And after kind of spending time with community, it's been shared with me is there are lots of other things that would be acceptable that we've done elsewhere in Austin. Like we've done an early childhood center at Pease Elementary School, which is another historic building. We can do kind of all sorts of different programs. It doesn't have to be one thing or the other. Ideally, it's educational purpose, but it really depends on what the community needs as a whole. So hopefully that was answering some of those questions. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi again.
Hey.
So I'm a parent to two former Blackshear students. One's currently at McCallum and one at Keeling. So a couple of concerns. AISD had the underlying accountability data for 2023, 2024 a year ago in August. This wasn't a surprise. And there could have been planning for the last year based on the underlying data without having the actual letter grade for over a year. That's the first thing.
Can I respond to that? Or you may wait.
Please wait.
Oh, wait.
Thank you. So you mentioned breaking the accountability change as the focus here, and that's a surface level problem because the root cause of this is that students are not being provided with consistently with highly effective teaching, with high quality instructional materials, and with high expectations within a strong school culture. All of those are essential.
Oh yeah, I agree.
And then AISD, and you in particular, have said that strategically placing highly effective teachers in schools that need them the most is not what, quote, AISD does.
So what AISD
Cultural
historically
competence is considered to be more important, which is what you told me, and that's a false choice because both can be true. You can have a highly effective teacher who is also culturally competent. So my question, regardless of where our students from Oak Springs or Blackshear go, what are you going to do to ensure that we have highly effective teachers, high quality instructional materials, and high expectations, no matter what?
Yeah. So I have different thoughts on some of those comments. The first thing I would say is it is not all about accountability, just to be clear. I've never said that. I am saying that if I do not break the accountability chain, the district as a whole may introduce a risk that takes away local control. So it has to be part of the consideration and has to be part of this. If we ignore it, I promise all of you and anybody that will listen to me, that puts us in a difficult situation downstream. And you can look at Fort Worth and what they didn't decide to do 2 years ago that they would have otherwise, at this point, which they would have done. I'm not going to allow us to get there. The other thing I would say is you asked about, the underlying data on 23, 24, and 25. So I want everybody to understand where we were in 22, 23, 23, 24, and 24, 25. We came into a system together, right? 22, 23 accountability. We had 3 superintendents that year. I'm not sure if people remember that. We had our staffing rate was around 84%. Now it's at 97%. We hired 26 principals that year. This year we hired 5, and I knew where all of them went. Our attrition rate between Title I and Title I schools was 22%. Now it's 2.5%. And I share this because I want our community to know that we have been moving the system in a way that aligns with who we are. At the time when 23, 24, and 25, when we knew where we were, we knew that we had work to do. We didn't have students on grade level. We didn't have aligned curriculum, which is a big issue. We're running 15 different curriculum in Austin ISD. And who does that hurt? It hurts students who have high mobility rates. Students who are moving because rent increases by 20%. And they're going from one school to another, a different scope and sequence. They go in, and then we don't have the ability to support them. So that was a huge issue. So in 23, and I'm saying this because I responded because it seems as though we haven't been doing a lot. We have been moving this huge system, and there's evidence that it's working. So in 23, when we first came together, we went through a procurement process. We procured HMH for K-1-2. We, for the first time in like 6 years, actually procured consumables. So instead of having teachers having to go to the photocopier room, we actually had things that we could distribute to our students they could use and they could touch and they could work with. We did that through this through the summer. And then in 23, 24, what were we working through? The TA agreed order, that thing that was going to take us down. I don't know if we remember that, but that was the thing that was going to cause the state of Texas to come and take us over. So we had this huge issue that we were working through. So we then turned around our ERP system, which is the foundation like platform that we used to manage all data. And then on top of that, we build multi-tier system support. So for the first time in a very long time, I can tell you which students are on grade level, which ones aren't, across the entire system. And 2 years ago, we couldn't do that. And that's wild. But we could not do that 2 years ago. So then you think about, well, what do you learn from that information? Well, now you know which students need tier 2 or tier 3 interventions. You understand what you need to procure as far as curriculum to ensure that the supports are there. We went after a tax rate election to bring content interventionists because we had schools that had 40% of their students that needed tier 3 interventions. Like all these things were coming together, and we actually adopted curriculum, high quality instructional materials. We've been persistent in how we're using it, and we're tracking how it's being used. We gave a presentation just a week and a half ago that showed the adoption rate and the use over the last 3 semesters, and it's gone from 55% to 82%. And so what that's done is it's gotten us to increase our early literacy outcomes and early numeracy outcomes in a way they haven't moved for years. And so in 23, you had 30 Fs. In 24, you had 29. In 25, you have 23. Next year, you're going to have a fraction of that. So I want to be really clear, like we have been working really, really, really hard. You have to have an improved climate and culture before you can take anything on hard. I think we've done that, and you see that because staff it's hard work, but we're seeing like movement into the system opposed to out of the system, which is very different than 3.5 years ago. Very, very different when we had a fear-based culture. So yes, we had information, but if we would have acted in a way that drove outcome movement only, it wouldn't have been who we are. And that's what I worry about. And so like there have been models, like drill and kill model, something that always said, if you have a school and you have middle of year data and it shows that your students are not on grade level, you can do things to get the students to be successful in the STAR test, right? Like you see that happen all throughout the state of Texas. That is not who we are. Like we want a sustained system that does it the right way. So the grade is important, but how you get the grade and ensuring that it's sustained over time is more important. And so we decided, and our board agreed, that what we're going to be doing is looking at like long-term system improvement. And so because of the lawsuits, because of the uncertainty and what was going to be shared, because of all the things that we were doing, we knew that we were moving. We knew that we needed to go. And the way that things got released, it created kind of pressures in the system. But I don't want anybody here to think that we haven't been working really, really hard. And there's evidence that the system is responding without a doubt. And so regarding highly effective teachers, that's a term the state uses. I don't like to use that term. There are lots of teachers that can be identified as highly effective, and there's different ways to describe what that looks like. The state wants to make sure there's correlation between your teachers' observations and how they're evaluated at the end of the year and student outcomes in their classroom, right? That's how they kind of align. I will tell you that for a long time in Austin ISD, we didn't even have a way to align that and measure it. So now that we have that, and we know how many teachers have the tenure, how many are TI designated or nationally board certified, I will tell you that years ago, I looked at certain verticals and you had students have a first-year teacher 3 years in a row. Like, you cannot have that happen in our system. But if you have attrition rates the way that we did it, you have staffing rates the way we did, you're going to have it. And so we've been combating that, have all the inputs and outputs in this, and the summative data demonstrates that the system is responding. Could we have done more? I think that you could always do more. Do I believe that in order to get the ratings, or if I was kind of playing that game, if we would have aligned with who we are, probably not. So that's the balance. I'm happy to share more, but there's been a lot that this school system has taken on, and I'm just really proud of like the teachers and the principals, because you don't see turnover the way that you did before. You don't, and that's something I think really that we should really be proud of.
Okay, we have our next question.
Hi, I'm Laura DeBlane. I'm
Hey.
a current parent at Blackshear. I think I spoke last Saturday, so nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
But I think we have great teachers here in our school. I think that they've demonstrated that. Our school's rated C, and from the work by our teachers
Yeah.
and our students, that accountability chain was already broken here.
Yeah.
And so through their work, this campus that's 134 plus years old, wasn't closed by the state. So they're carrying forward that legacy. So my question is, when we have a campus that's shown success in breaking that chain, why take students and move them here where success has been demonstrated and then move us all somewhere else during that 3-year period that we have to maintain an accountability level? How is incorporating additional turmoil, additional change for the students and the teachers? And who manages the new building process? Who's going to be coordinating the education of the students during the TAP? So we're moving the students here and joining together. And I understand that that's a requirement. It's, you know, we're very open to that, and we understand that that's a struggle for everybody. It's going to be a change, and we're open to welcoming students. And we recognize that all schools that are closing are really grieving, and it's much more of a struggle for them. But then to go through that 1 year of transition for everybody, and then the next year go through another huge transition, that's 2 years into a 3-year accountability period. And then you have 1 more year. So where does that put us, for the students, for our teachers, and how does that set everybody up for success so that looking 3 and 4 and 5 years out, we're not right back here?
Yeah, no, great question. So the first thing I would say is, so I want to be really clear. You're saying you, like, there's no decision, there's no plan. Like, that's why we're in this process, to talk about what that looks like. I just want to be really clear. Like, as I've said before, I want to listen, understand, and make an informed decision. That's what this is about. So I don't want anybody to leave here thinking that there's a decision being made. This is really based on feedback that I've heard from others in the same community. So, and I'm committed to doing that. As far as other students coming into a school, I would say that there are great things happening in all of our schools. And there just are. And what we think about whenever we have to go through a disruption like this, where can we keep the student body together? Right? It's always going to be preferable to have one whole school merge with another versus have a school get split up. So that's one thing. So 2, the state of Texas, strongly believes that if y'all been doing great things, keep doing those things. And if you have a school that is working through the accountability chain and is going to an A or B or a C, kind of let them keep doing their thing, right? Because it's the same school system, it's the same school district, same trustee, same superintendent. But this school, based on a variety of different things in the past, or maybe a lack of resources, elsewhere, just has been able to be successful in this way. And so that gives kind of more flexibility to how that staffing plan ultimately comes together. If it wasn't the situation, let's say that it was a school that's going through a restart, that's when you really have pretty strict requirements regarding the net % of teachers in core instructional areas that are highly effective. If you're going from a school that is working through the accountability chain and going to a higher performing school, which is what you have here, there's a lot more flexibility because the state doesn't want to disrupt all the great things that are already going on, right? But we acknowledge that we need more support because you have more students, right? And they have different needs. And so that's how we're tackling it. It's not. And the other thing I'll say is transition needs to be addressed, and the way that you do it is by planning. And that's why you're never going to see me make a decision in the spring semester. I try to make it as early as possible. I think clear is kind. I cannot take away planning time from our families and from our staff. And so my hope is that whatever we decide to do as a community, we create the time, bring communities together, and then plan it out. I have the frameworks and the structures and things that we need to consider, but the details of that should be built out by you all and the Oak Springs community and the collective community. Regarding transition period time, that school has paused. So the construction hasn't progressed. And by law, I'm required to execute the turnaround plan until the chain is broken. So it's not like I could, start the plan and then not complete the plan and move you back. We'd have to really ensure that the students had met accountability from the state's perspective, the TAP had been executed, and at that point, you can move, if we wanted to, back to the new school. What we don't want to do is to not understand that, because if we're going to move back, then I want construction to continue, right? If I don't, then I need to stop, right, and then reallocate the funds and continue on the path that we are. So that's how it would work. So it wouldn't be, I think, a year and a year. I think you have probably 2 in 1, just because that project is slowed down. We have to restart it back up and then get back underway, and then design correctly to ensure that both communities are welcome and see themselves in the building. So that's how it would work.
Okay, I'm going to come to you, and then you, and you, and then right back here. So, and then I'll continue.
Yeah, but just kind of piggybacking on that question, right? So what consideration, as we're talking about like necessary disruption versus additional disruption? Because that's what I think it makes a lot of sense, the part for the 26-27 school year, right? To have the schools consolidate here. But what consideration is being given, and I think what I'd been reading, it was slated for the 27-28 year that they would be looking at moving back, but even 2 years out, right? What consideration is being given on that additional disruption and how it will impact that turnaround plan? And has consideration been given to that? And then my other question is, and I'm so sorry, but a modern building is one type of infrastructure that can help students learn. But there's also the professional and the community infrastructure that's already in place here. So I guess is it being considered, the importance of that infrastructure on the success of the students, and if a modern building actually merits rebuilding that?
Yeah, so one of the reasons that, no, it's a good question. One of the reasons that we are modernizing the facilities is a couple. First is the general operating expenses that we have as a school system, given how old we are. I mean, we're just old. Things break all the time, and those improvements come out of our general operating budget. So, in some years we spend $12-14 million on rental chillers, replacing electricity, just things that aren't capitalized, so they have to come out of our operating budget. And so in 2017 and 2022, we said, you know what, instead of spending, $12 million or $1 million like every single year, depending on the campus, let's really think through how to modernize the space, because if I can get rid of all the deferred maintenance, right, then my cost per year goes down, and that's the same dollars that I'm using for teacher salaries and for programs. It's the same bucket of money. And so that was the general philosophy. And I also want to be really clear that there are things that older schools just don't have. And I want to be really clear, like, schools are so much more than a building, right? You can have an incredible school and a sea of portables. That happens, right? That can be fine. But the reality is, over time, there are other things that you want to make sure you do have. You want to make sure you have light that goes deep into the building. You want to make sure that the air quality is at a certain level. You want to make sure that safety and security requirements meet the expectations of the school system. So, security vestibules, lines of sight, like all the things that you would want to see in a school given the context we're in, is incorporated into our designs now. And so when you think about students and kind of what students need to be successful, we always think about shelter, we think about food, we think about lots of things. But if your HVAC system isn't running, like, it's really hard to learn. If this, if water's not running, this happens. It's really difficult. But also, does the student feel safe? And safety is community, right? Like, that's 95% of it. But the building also contributes. And right, wrong, or indifferent, with 116 buildings, we do have instances every single day that the chiefs and chief of police and our SROs work through. And over time, in the next 50 years, right, you want to get to a place where the system as a whole has the infrastructure to support your students wholly in a way that they couldn't have been supported 50 years back. Because it's not 2025 versus 2050. It's the building from 1910 or whatever versus where we're going. So that's really what it is more than anything else. It doesn't mean that we can't have incredible schools and old buildings. It happens all the time. It just means as a system, the goal generally is to move in this way. Now, could you do a huge renovation and do all these things? Sure. What it really limits you is the corridors, the widths of the building, the setbacks, just the things that you have now. But it doesn't mean that one's better than the other. It's just as a system, if you continue to operate really, really old buildings everywhere, it really hammers you. So that's just generally speaking kind of what it looks like. And then the disruption piece, to piggyback off what the person in front of you said, I think that's where we just have to work through it if we go that way, right? That's really what it comes down to. I'm not going to present something that doesn't work unless y'all's voice is in it. I'm just not going to do that. But
maybe you can clarify or help me understand the slightly bigger picture moment here of, so consolidation started happening because of the enormous budget deficit, and in the process we're resolving performance plan. And so here's my actual question is, can you tell us how finishing one building, moving a school, finishing that building, and then moving a school again is cost effective and meets the goals that we're trying to achieve here?
So to be clear, there are so many pressures in AISD right now. Just to be honest, I have accountability pressure. We have pressures from our response to TA Read Order. We have budget challenges. The federal government, the way that Title II, Title III, and Title IV dollars have been impacted over the last year have caused me to make very challenging decisions that impact our ability to support our students. Right? That's just for me, it's I have to think about 50 years. That is what we're trying to do. We have to think in terms of 50 years. So when we talked about what we're doing as a system, I had to address the accountability risk, which we're talking about here. I had to address the surplus of seats, which we have in this area. I had to align feeder patterns, which has caused lots of frustration throughout our community. But at the end of the day, you have aligned feeder patterns in West Austin, you don't have them in East Austin. I have middle schools in East Austin go to 4 or 5 high schools. That doesn't happen at Murchison, doesn't happen at O'Henry, doesn't happen at Goretzky. They go to one high school. So if you don't fix that in 50 years or in 20 years or in 10 years, you don't look back and realize all the harm and the disruption that's caused because you had the opportunity to address it and you didn't. The other thing we had to make sure is program alignment, which doesn't really impact this area as much, but our district-wide dual language programs, they were intended to serve emergent bilingual students. And the city has grown and families have shifted, and now we have schools that have 14, 21, 22, and 44% emergent bilingual students. It's moving in the wrong direction. And by law, 89th legislature said that Matias school districts, you're going to have to ensure that you have a certified teacher in every classroom. Right now, 12% of our teachers are on alternative certifications. And so if I'm going to have to get to a point where I have to pull a teacher because I have emergent bilingual students here that require a teacher, where am I going to pull them from? I'm going to pull them from the program that has the teacher but does not have the students. And so that's going to put those programs in a difficult position in a year or two, which is what I'm trying to do now, is position those programs to be sustainable for years to come. And I would say lastly, addressing our transfer policy. So I just want to be really clear, those are the 5 things. And if you did any one of them in isolation, then you would not have the same solution, right? So I just wanted to put that out there. I know Christina covered it, but for me, it's really, really important we talk about it. So how does it save funds over a period of time? Because you said that's one of the things that contributed to it, and it is, but it's not the only thing. I just described many others. A one-time disruption in cost is different than cost in perpetuity, right? So people will say, Matthias, go sell properties, right, to offset the budget. The reality of it all is I can sell a property for $20 million and it'll be a drop in the bucket. What we need to do is to reduce our overall costs, because that cost is reoccurring year over year over year. At the same time, I need to pay teachers more. At the same time, I need to put more money into our students and support them and recognize that every student has a different need. And so there will be a disruption. It occurs whenever we merge schools. It occurs when we build schools. This summer, you're going to see more movement of students than the last 144 years, because we're building the 2022 bond program, and you have almost, I think, 8 or 9 schools coming online. So they were out of school, they moved to a portable village, either on-site or off-site, and now they're moving back to the new school. So this happens all the time in Austin ISD. It happens all the time. But what we have to think about is 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, because we are in the forever business. But I cannot shy away from a short-term disruption if it ultimately stabilizes the district long-term. And that's really what all this is about. So if we'll hear sometimes, Matthias, well, you may lose students because of this change. And my argument is, okay, well, how many students are not coming to Austin ISD and are going to a different school because they don't think they have a strong neighborhood school in their neighborhood, right? We know those numbers. They're going to charters, or maybe they're going to a different school all across town. Like, why do they feel like they have to do that? We should be able to provide the resources so that that school is supported and becomes a strong, thriving neighborhood school. They're already strong, but for whatever reason, based on decisions the district made in years past, they haven't been able to meet accountability. So I know you're probably wanting a more precise answer, is like, prove to me that this works and this doesn't work. I'm a systems person. I think about the whole. I have 70,000 students, 116 campuses, a lot of things that are all kind of working together. But at the end of the day, we have schools that do not have the resources that they need to be successful. And I don't have enough to spread.
Can you boil it down? So this is not a cost-saving measure. This is a success of the program measure.
I would say it's a stability of the entire organization, like all of these put together. Okay. I mean, but some reduce costs, some require a slight increase in cost over a short period of time. But at the end of the day, the net is a reduction in cost for sure, because you have fewer empty seats. We have 20,000 empty seats right now. That's 3,000 seats larger than the Moody Theater, the Moody Center. I haven't been to it, but that's what it is. So it's a lot of seats, and they're not all like in one area. And if I did only close schools that had low numbers of students, then it would all be in East Austin. And that's what we're trying to avoid, is that kind of like weight that one community carries over the other.
Hi. My name is Marco Praro. I'm a parent of 2 students here at Blackshear, and you seem extremely confident that the new construction at Oak Springs can do this. My question is, why wasn't it part of the initial plan, and why did it occur spontaneously at a community meeting? I think that was on a weeknight sometime. And second part of that question, was it designed to prevent us from doing what Maplewood did, which is effective, because I feel like this community could put out Save Blackshear concerts and Save Blackshear signs. And I respectfully, you're asserting that this can be done, but I've not seen any evidence that this school can maintain, that the new construction can do this. And again, why was it not, if you're so confident that it can be done, why was it not a part of the initial draft plan?
So the first thing I would say is, I don't do that. Like, I don't try to overthink how a community is going to respond. I mean, community shows up how they want to show up, and I love however a community chooses to show up. I'm going to be there. I mean, that's just how I am. I don't compare one school to another. That's just not who I am. Now, we talk about confidence. My confidence is not that this could work. The existing plan can work equally as well. I want to be really clear. Like, I don't necessarily feel as though I'm trying to change something that I don't already have confidence in. This plan came to be because I felt very strongly that the current plan could work. And so I know you're about to shake your head, but let me finish this comment. The feedback. So the original plan, October 3rd and the 31st, which included Oak Springs moving to Blackshear, that was the plan that I feel very confident in that plan. I feel like it would work. I feel like it would ultimately do many, many incredible things for this school community and this school district, period. And as I said before, like, I am committed to exploring any idea that comes up, period. And I can tell you precisely where this idea came up. It came up when I was at the with Reverend Lands at the East Side community meeting. But I'm just sharing with you. I mean, I'm just sharing with you where it came from. I'm honestly telling you, like, this happens throughout the city where ideas come, and I would say, okay, if that's something the community wants me to explore, I will explore it, and we will go through it together. And that's what this is about right now. This is me doing exactly what I said I would do, and telling my board and telling our community we're going to go through this process. Did I look at it the other way? I did, but the problem is I cannot move Blackshear into a school that had historically not performed, right? So from a turnaround perspective, right, it wouldn't work that way. Could it work if both schools were high performing and we just had to do a consolidation? Yeah, it could absolutely work. And so that I think, coupled with the fact that I had heard for a very long time that the Blackshear school, historic in nature, building and everything else, was something that needed to be considered, allowed me to get comfortable with that plan because it broke the accountability chain, it reduced the number of seats in the area, and honored what I'd heard, which was, you know, the Blackshear school is historic and it needs to be, you know, maybe supported or evaluated in that way. There should be a consideration. That's how we ended up there. And it wasn't until community came out and told me, Matthias, think about it this different way, and that's what we're doing now. So that's just the honest truth. And so I don't know, and so this is just about listening and hearing, and then.
Well, I do hope you're hearing that you know, it's not a plan that well, I'll just speak for myself. For me, my family, and my children, I feel like it's a plan that is not considered of us at all. I feel like it's considered somebody that is not us.
Okay.
Understood.
We have one right here. I'll come back here, and then right over here, and then okay.
Hi, thank you very much for being here today, Matthias. My name is Edna. My husband and I have 2 kids here at Blackshear.
Awesome.
We are also very big fans of public education and AISD as well. I know that you are in a very difficult position and that your job is not envied by anyone. So my question is also somewhat of a comment, but something that I do want you to address. Much like Jennifer said at the start of the meeting, we as a community here in Blackshear, and I hope you see the entire community here, including our amazing teachers, our principal, parents, supporters in the neighborhood as well. We're here because we want you to understand the community that we have, and it's not just about the building or things like that, right? We want to welcome Oak Springs. We want them to become a part of our community in hopes that, you're right, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, that AISD is successful, and AISD, especially in neighborhoods that have been neglected on the east side, is successful, right? So we want to continue that. I do think that your idea about short-term disruptions versus long-term disruptions, I completely understand that as a systems person myself, right? But I would like you to consider the disruption that comes from, in some ways, moving a community here, which we want. We want them to stay here, and then moving everyone back to a new building, what the impact that has. In terms of disruption for, you have a transportation plan that may have already been figured out, and then you have to reverse it in another way, and it might not serve people within this community to go back the other way if you have a plan that works and that has been working for 1, 2, 3 years. You have teachers who are in classrooms that they're known, teachers that are dedicated to the students and community here, and to lift that all back and then put it into a new facility and a new building, I'm not sure that that counts as just a short-term disruption. To me, it seems like it would also be much more of a longer-term disruption. And so for me, at least, and I think some of the other community members echo this as well, I understand consolidation. We understand consolidation. We're under-enrolled kids don't have resources, teachers don't have resources. We need to consolidate in order to be able to do that, and I highly believe in that and think it has to be done. But I think it should also be done in a thoughtful manner in terms of not just short-term, long-term disruptions, but thinking about how those actual disruptions, where you say this is a short-term disruption that will have a better long-term impact, thinking about the other way, whereas if we don't have that disruption in the first place, even though it's a new building and all these things, are there things we can do to minimize that short-term disruption and still have that long-term positive effect 15, 20, 30 years down the road?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it was well said, and I appreciate you, commiserating with me on all the things that we're working through. It is real. I love this city. I love this school district. We're trying really hard to get it right? When no one is doing us any favors, it's kind of what I feel like. So, I think my response, I guess, generally is, we have evidence of us being able to do pretty incredible things well if we plan together and execute. And I would say, for me, I'm here precisely at this time in Austin ISD to ensure that we execute in the way that we have it in the past. TA order, MTSS, I mean, all the things. And we've seen lots of moves happen in Austin ISD, and I think that's why the idea didn't seem so foreign when it was proposed to us, right? We've seen huge elementary schools move off-site. That happened at Brentwood. They went to Webb. I've seen two schools leave both schools and go to another school, combine, and then move back to the brand new school. I've seen just about every iteration of it, and so yes, it's a disruption. Is it something that we can work through? I believe that we could, and we've seen that occur over the last couple of years, and it's happening right now. I mean, we have schools that are not at their home campus and will not be for a couple of years. And we just work through it. It's important that we have our principal and we have our staff all buy into the plan, but that's right. You have to agree on the plan. You have to ensure that it's executed with fidelity. And so, I think it's a consideration. It is something that we definitely take to heart. But in some cases, we just have to do it. And we've demonstrated that we can do it. And so that I will kind of go back to the team and we'll talk about, is this different or something that we need to do differently here if we go down this path? Which again, there's no decision, no recommendation. I'm happy to explore that. But I just want to be really honest, there's one, two, I think there's 4 schools right now that are not even on their own home campus, right? And they're far away, and several of them will be combining and coming back, and they're thriving. So I just it can be done. I feel like it can be done. Maybe I need to reassess if it can be done here, but we have evidence that it can be done.
Right, and I don't doubt that it can be done, but the thing that I want you to actually consider is that does it actually need to be done if the community here is already thriving and welcomes another community into the thriving
Sure.
community, and we all grow together.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think change to new facilities, change for things like that, just because this is what's worked in the past, isn't necessarily the right thing for all communities.
That's fair.
Okay, we have another question.
Well, my name is Martin Creethy, and I'm also a parent of a child here, and I, like many of us in here, don't envy your position. We thank you for taking the time to come out and listen to us. Edna was very articulate in what she said, and I'm going to try not to be redundant, but maybe perhaps put a finer point on it. Blackshear, as you see, is a community of faculty, staff, educators, the staff that support them, all the programming, and then of course the parents themselves that both support the teachers and of course our own kids. And I know there was talk of the culture piece and of this building as a building, but I'd like you to give consideration to where this building is located and for how long it's been here. There are people who are part of the Blackshear family who have been part of this institution for 40 or 50 years. They live in this neighborhood. They walk here. They have ties to local institutions that are part of what makes this facility and this school what it is and helps us to thrive the way the programming is supported, of course, at the district level, but also by much of the local institutions nearby. The historic university that's next door, that's a very welcoming partner to this school. Just take into consideration the actual neighborhood context of this historic building and location, and consider how these disruptions could impact not just the families, but the programming, the entire, just the feel of what makes Blackshear Blackshear, and Blackshear kids. So I don't know how else to, or how more articulate I can play. I can make the point, but Blackshear's historic nature is not just how long it's been in this particular spot, but the fact that it is in this particular spot.
Hi, John Flowers. My daughter is in pre-K here at Blackshear. I've got two questions, hopefully pretty easy ones for you. They're for more short-term for the plan for next year. The first one is the second draft, or I guess the draft plan came out, official paperwork basically had the attendance boundaries getting adjusted in kind of two ways. One from actual consolidations like Oak Springs coming into us, where we're essentially getting the retired attendance zone, and also certain places certain neighborhoods switching between schools. The kind of post-draft update that came out last week said a lot of that was getting paused, and we kind of have both affecting us. We have obviously the Oak Springs area coming into Blackshear. We also have like areas from Matthews and Zavala, et cetera, also coming in. So is all of that, is half of that being paused and we're only getting Oak Springs, or are we still getting other areas as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what I've been doing is working with the team and looking at the boundary changes that are absolutely necessary to be responsive to the turnaround plans and the programmatic moves. Whenever we did a comprehensive, and we're still going to do it, y'all, just to be clear, like we're still going to go forward, that work is not stopping, but when we did it comprehensively, we created kind of ranges, and we said, you know, as a for a healthy system, you want to be between 85 and 95% utilized. And so there were lots of boundary changes, and those boundary changes for elementary schools had to line up with middle schools and line up with high schools to ensure feeder pattern alignment. And so what I told the team and what I instructed and what I reviewed since are the changes required to support the turnaround plan. In this case, it's Oak Springs to Blackshear. And that is really the extent of the boundary change for the vote that is being completed on November 20th. You know, when we pick that work back up, which we are going to do in very short order, we're going to begin to address all the other changes. I'm not confident I can get it to December. I know the trustees that have asked me about that, so it'll likely be a little bit longer. But that's the kind of the extent of the work. And the reason we're able to do that is because, you know, we were trying to balance the entire system. But if we make some moves like this, you may get to 96% or 97%, which is 2% higher than the target rate. But at the end of the day, you know, that's based on reside, and you know the number of students that transfer in, the number that transfer out, the enrollment number, and then after I review all of that, I'm very confident that it works, given the fact that even if we're over by 2%. Does that make any sense? The other thing that I will say is, for our calculations, we use permanent infrastructure, not portables. Right now we have 440 portables in Austin ISD, representing over 1 million square feet. Our newest portable is like 32 years old. We have some that are 60, 70 years old. They're meant to be short-term solutions. And so for a short term, I'm willing to use them to help ensure that we have the capacity to make any of these moves work without having to make the other offsetting move work. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it sounds like only, not the second half, but the first half will impact you.
Okay,
That was only one question. You said a couple of questions.
Yeah, the other one's hopefully pretty easy. For the Oak Springs community that is coming over here, I know it's obviously a much bigger effect on them. Sorry, a much bigger effect on them. But I know I've heard that a large concentration of them live very close to the school, like within walking distance, and also don't really have reliable transportation. Technically, we're within the 2-mile boundary where transportation doesn't have to be provided. So I think as a community, we'd probably push to provide transportation for them to help account for that move.
Yeah. Well, and so I appreciate you saying that, because that is one of the things that was shared initially about, why maybe the combined school should end up there, because of the student needs of the population that is really close to that school. And so we always think about, like, which student is going to be adversely impacted to a greater degree because of their lived experience. And so that is really one of the things that allowed me to continue to explore this and really lead to this conversation here. But yes, we can absolutely add transportation. We've already committed to doing it. For the move from Oak Springs to Blackshear, it's within the 2 miles, but we certainly recognize that we just, we need to provide more support, and we can do that. We have the ability to do so. I have the authority to do so, and we're doing it, and that's going to be in the plan.
Okay, I have 5 on deck. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'll let you start.
Hey, my name is Mose Bouchel. We met out back there. Sorry if this was addressed before. I was trying to direct people in the front.
Yeah, sorry. I was like rushing in. I was like, where's
no, it's all good. So you mentioned, and so forgive me if this was addressed before I came in, but you mentioned that, obviously a lot of this is because of an enrollment crisis in the district, right? And I'm curious if you consider the impact of closing a school like Blackshear that has such like a great reputation for navigating like a lot of the challenges and complexities that are happening on the east side right now. I mean, Blackshear is a school that's really stood out. It does great by its students. When you close a school that's doing that, does that threaten to dissuade more parents from enrolling in AISD? Like, could that be kind of actually counterproductive when you're trying to attract people to the school district?
Yeah, so this is something I've been in Austin ISD, believe it or not, like 7.5 years. Been in this role now almost 3 years. First year's interim, and one of the things that I'm always kind of grappling with is how to extrapolate or arrive at numbers that I can depend on for an assumption, right? Because our trustees asked for it. Like, Matthias, if this happens, what is going to be the impact to your budget? And my response to you is going to be, first, we don't want any family to leave, right? But we want families to do what's best for their student. And I do believe that, Austin ISD provides the best public education in Austin, period. And we have evidence of that, especially given our scale. Like, we do some really incredible things, and we have depth, and we have resources that many other schools can't provide, and that is, really important that we protect that. Will students move? Will they leave? I get this sometimes, and I'll hear, Matthias, we did a survey of our families, and 60% are going to leave. And just to be really honest, I've also received surveys 4 years ago when we went through similar changes, and I know that wasn't what ultimately happened. And I also know that there are lots of times when community will leave and then come back, or actually go back into the system once there's a break in the school, in the kind of vertical team. Like, let's say elementary school breaks, is consolidated, and perhaps they leave. But we have seen that what really anchors our school systems are high schools, and lots of families end up coming back. And so we do account for it by way of a sensitivity analysis on our financials, and say, okay, we lose X amount of students here, what might that look like? The counter position, this is something that I am really honest about, is what would families do if you had thriving schools that are high performing in areas of Austin that haven't had them? Because there are parts of our city right now where many of the students who reside choose to not come to Austin ISD. And why is that? Well, I mean, one of them is, the reasons is that the school is not identified as high performing. Because a lot of families, they don't know what I know, or don't know how beautiful the school is inside necessarily, or the great things happening. They see this letter grade and they make a decision, and families are busy. Like, I understand that. And so if we're able to actually pull the resources to ensure that every student gets what they need, and we already have evidence the system is responding, and your schools improve, which we're already improving, I just gave stats about how we're improving, then you would expect to get a lot of them back. Like, one of the things that I would argue is Martin now having access to Keeling, all the students who are not choosing Martin, I would expect that to increase because now they have access to Keeling, and that's one of the things that we're doing as part of this plan. So as a whole, when 70,000 students, there's students that choose to leave, there's students that choose to come. I want to make sure that we do everything possible to attract families, So yes, we do talk about it, we do localize it, and we say, okay, what could the impact be here? But as a whole, I'm not able to support everything. That's the honest truth. But if we do it well, we should have strong neighborhood schools, and if we do that, then we would see an increase in students. Again, against the challenges that we have, like we lost 2,000 students, over 2,000 students this year, had nothing to do with performance. It had nothing to do with gentrification. It had to do with immigration. We lost over 2,500 students. They're in the Rumberg area. Like that entire we lost families who did not immigrate to Austin, and we lost some that decided to leave. That is a huge, huge number, and like largely is greater than anything we would see as part of these moves. So there are things happening that we are having to work through that we couldn't. If you would have told me last year that we would have seen that, there's no way I would have believed it. Not to that degree, but something changes at the federal level, immigration changes, or the response from the federal government changes, and then you see this impact. So it's a long-winded answer to say we model it, we track it. When I hear things, sometimes they work, and sometimes they do come to fruition, sometimes they don't. But if we can improve our entire system, my hope is that more families in Austin select Austin ISD. So I don't know, but that's just like the honest truth.
Okay, I do want to do a quick time check. We're about 14 minutes from the end of the meeting, but because we did start a little bit late, I'm going to add like 10 minutes on the back end, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, whatever.
So I'll come to you and then have.
I'll try to be quick. First, I'd like to invite you to our 135th anniversary that is happening in February at the school. We're very excited.
100%.
So please come, please bring your staff and help us celebrate the legacy of the school. And I'd like to channel onto his comment about the place-based identity of this campus. We are right next to our HBCU. We have amazing teachers here in these halls who graduated from there. We are also right next to Keeling. I'm so glad you brought that up. We have little brothers and little sisters here at the school. The middle schoolers come down and they get their siblings so that working families can keep working and those siblings can help take those younger kids home. Third, we're right next to Carver Library, and that is a really, really important third space for our community where students can go without their parents who are working. We are a working class neighborhood. So please take into account that place-based identity of our school. And then second, I'm gonna say, we've been waiting with bated breath and trying to be kind. We have been told to not complain, but we're seeing that the schools who are complaining are getting your ear. We are seeing that the schools who raise money, the schools who protest, the schools that have money are gonna stay open. And our school, we don't have the time to make this change. We are welcoming them with open arms for this turnaround plan, and we need the time. Our teachers need to get ready. We need those funds. We need plans in place, and we will be successful with that turnaround plan because I believe in our leadership, I believe in our teachers, and I believe in our community. Yeah. But we can't do it if you keep changing the script on us. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah, so I wanna be really clear, like that's not how this works. That's not who I am. Just not. There are lots of voices all over the city of Austin. There's our board and I are very committed to being like true to who we are, our North Star, and just be diligent about the work. Because on Friday, when we upload our documents, you're gonna see closures, 10 closures that are very much still have communities advocating. And so I just want to be really, really clear, like that's not part of this, not what this is. When I decided to slow it down, it's because I am 100% committed to doing exactly what we're doing here. Like I need to listen and I need to ensure that every idea is thoroughly vetted. And when it comes to turnaround plans, there are limitations because the state of Texas, the requirements, how close I've been to them. When it comes to programmatic moves, the foundation of the why is very clear. Like, you know, all of those things are able to progress. The ones that were very difficult were the countless boundary changes and the number of community meetings that we've had to get that right, and the balanced enrollment. Like those are just different types of factors contributing to those closures. And so, you know, there are 3 schools. Not all of them have the same type of kind of voice. Maybe is the way that, you know. But so I'm gonna be really clear. That's not who the board is. It's not who I am. If there needs to be a conversation about, you know, all the things that I can share with anybody everywhere about how we are staying true, I'm happy to have that conversation. But I'm not going to allow like that to even creep in, because that's just not who we are. Like, we're just not that. We're not that board. We're not that administration. You know, and I don't know what else to say. Like, that's just not what this is. I want to do a good job. I want to make sure I'm listening to community voice. This could be done so many different ways. I mean, it's done in other parts of the state very, very differently. I love the school district. I love our community. I'm going to be here if you're here. And I want to listen, I want to improve, and I want to refine. And at any point, if I think that the voice is not getting in the way that I need it to, then I'm going to slow it down. And that's what this is. But the work's going to continue. There will be additional consolidations. There will be boundary changes. I'm not going to leave my time here as a superintendent without having a line feeder patterns in Austin. That is the thing at the end of the day. If we get that right, you look back in 20 years, 50 years, it will have a huge impact in the city. And I never would have thought we'd be able to tackle it. I mean, I just wouldn't. So anyway, just wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, my name is Sherwin Patton, and I debated on whether I was going to ask a question or not, but I wanted to share a little bit of something. So I grew up in this community and still live in this community. My mother taught at Blackshear. My mother went to Blackshear. My mother went to Houston-Tillotson, graduated from Houston-Tillotson. So did my father. And so the reason why my mother taught at Blackshear at one point in time was because there was no other option until schools were integrated, in which she was able to teach at other schools after that. And so after that, she taught over at Lee Elementary Schools once schools were integrated. But we still lived over here in East Austin. My grandfather bought that property that I now live on in 1930. When he bought that property in 1930, my father passed away, and you know, a few years back, and the whole community decided that they were going to do a mural. I think it was led by Caitlin and some others. And there's a mural of my father and some other people who lived in that community that's still there. Now, as an educator in this community, what my mother did was she made sure that every child that lived in this community had an option. They had an alternative to everything else that was going on around them. So she tutored, and she looked out for all the children in the community. So now what I do is I chase the children who are in this community and make sure that they all have options. And I give them the support that they need. And that's what my organization does, because I'm living out what I saw my parents do, not because they had a choice, because they had to. And so when I look at the community, you know, I'm glad to see the community the way that it is now, that I get the chance to meet all these new people, but it looks very different from when I was a child. It looks very different. Now, thanks to the fact that I have some great neighbors, our end of the block is very different than every block in this area, because we kind of, well, they hang out and they schedule stuff and they invite me and I show up sometime. But I say all that to say, I spend a lot of time down at Oak Springs because I'm chasing the children. And I understand from looking in the room that the demographics has shifted a little bit. And so I'm running after the children because I'm trying to make sure that they have the same types of options that were afforded to me because my mother and others sacrificed. And so when we talk about the consolidation, I don't want it to be this us versus them that we're talking about. This is really all of us as East Austin coming together, because that's what East Austin was all about. It was about us as a people trying to survive and trying to make sure that we did better than survive, that we could actually have a chance to succeed, and some of the best and brightest have come out of this community. And so with that being said, I think that one of the most important things, and here comes my question, is for us to have information about one another, not based upon what we're hearing, but building relationships, because I feel like we may make some decisions in a vacuum if you're not careful. If we're not careful, we'll make a decision without being informed because we won't know the people who are directly impacted. And I'm not talking about just people at Oak Springs, I'm talking about people in this community. And so what I would like to propose and like to ask Superintendent, and thank you for having all of these meetings, is it possible for us to have a gathering, a few gatherings of Oak Springs and Blackshear community so that we can actually sit down, learn to know each other, talk, and come up with a solution for East Austin? Because this is not a decision about what's going on further east or over here, because it was never like that in this community. It was always about East Austin. And East Austin has a rich history of having to stick together. And so we cannot have a us versus them dichotomy, because if we do, it will not look like the East Austin that we're saying that we're celebrating right now. It will not look like that. I'm telling you, Houston-Tillotson is across the street. And Houston-Tillotson is trying to reach this entire community and even beyond. And they're trying to make a path for success for primarily Black and brown students. And what we're talking about right now is a group of Black and brown students who will feel like they're being displaced because they were promised something. They were promised something new, and they rarely get anything new. And so what I'm saying is that we just need to find out how we can come together and listen to everybody's voice. And my question for you is, would you help us to provide would you help them provide a space for that to happen, and then come in and listen to that group together? And are we as a community willing to do that? Because if we don't, I'm telling you what will happen is it'll feel like something done to a group of people, because I'm listening. I live on this end of the block, but I'm frequently on that end of the block. I grew up on this end of the block. This is all I knew was this end of the block. But I hang out a lot on the other end of the block. And I'm saying that if there's not a conversation, what it's gonna feel like is something being done to people versus something being done with people. So, Superintendent, back to my question. Will you create a space where we can all come together?
Yeah, so of course, I think, like I'm committed to ensuring community comes together to inform, what is the best solution. But I'm always gonna be really honest about what I can and can't do, right? And we've had that conversation. I've had lots of conversations in the community about, could we do this, could we do that, could we do that? And I'll, to be honest, like, these are things I can't support, but these are things that I can, and here are the reasons why. So absolutely, I welcome the opportunity to bring community together and provide a space or do what I can to facilitate, and I'm happy to participate. And I want to be really clear, like the vote that's coming up is about like step 1A, right? It's truly being responsive to turnaround plan. There may be expectations, about what is included, what's not included, but it's really about, breaking the turnaround plan, creating the turnaround plan and having us break the accountability chain, which does include Oak Springs coming to Blackshear. The steps after, I think there's opportunity to have that conversation together.
I don't so much have a question, but I told my kid that I would just let you know this, so I'm gonna do that.
Oh, awesome.
We're new to Blackshear this year. We've been in this community exactly 12 weeks. Due to various circumstances, my kid this is his third school. When he walked in this building the very first time, the way he lit up was unparalleled. There is life in these walls, and it's not something that can be replaced or rebuilt somewhere else without mass amounts of effort and togetherness, and even then I don't know. But my son wants you to know that this building, the literal building, the people in it, the walls, the art on the walls, all of it makes him feel safe. And he has never left another school that he's been at more excited or more engaged or more ready to come back tomorrow. And that's it.
What you want. What you want. Thanks for sharing that.
Hi,
I'm
Hello.
Abby Burnham. My daughter is in pre-K here. My older two children are at Zavala. My oldest was at Brook Elementary, which closed when he was in pre-K 4. I am a teacher at McCallum High School. I'm a former Education Austin board member. We've sat in meetings together. And I just want to, I keep hearing empty seats, empty seats. I've heard all about empty seats for all of my children's education now, for all of the East Side communities. And I just have a couple of observations, and maybe not so much questions, but one is that you talked earlier about how the kids come back to us in high school. They tend to come back to us in high school, those empty seats return at the high school level, they all fall into place. But I have run a little social experiment in my household this year because, again, my daughter is in pre-K 4 here, and we chose this school because partially of the great advocacy of Miss Bell, but because Zavala doesn't have after-school care. So when Brook was closed and we were, absorbed into a new community and welcomed with open arms and told that after-school care would be coming to the East Side, it did not. And we had a 4-year-old who could not stay at Zavala because she did not have after-school care. And so we have these communities and these beautiful programs and all of these things in place. But if we don't recruit them at the early levels, if we don't look at those empty seats starting in pre-K 3, pre-K 4, then we are doing a disservice to the enrollment in our school district, which then causes these financial problems. And so there is so much beautiful community that happens here, and we've heard all night about community, and I've seen 2 wonderful communities. And I'm not gonna, I can tell you that my daughter will be staying at Blackshear for the rest of her elementary school education, even though I will be routing kids to all different schools on the East Side, because she is a part of this community already. And so not only does AISD need to do better with engaging with families to stay within their communities, to build within their communities, to stop taking their students across district to other communities to start their education because they'll stay there, but that's going to help us build our enrollment and fill those empty seats. And if we're not looking at it at those earliest ages when kids fall in love with schools and fall in love with who they're around, then we're really missing out on a core part of our population. And that is, I wish that, I know that they're coming back at high school, but I think we really need to look at it from that early age.
Yeah, no. So just to be clear, and I very much appreciate that comment. Our pre-K program, our elementary schools, we have such strong programming. In many areas, it's one of the anchors. Where we see the biggest disruption is rising 6th graders, 5th to 6th. It's that kind of funky time. Students, our middle schools, we haven't quite figured out how to support our middle schools in a way that is balanced and ensures that our students get what they need. 1 year transitioning in, 1 year transitioning out. So 2 things are happening. Yes to the ensuring that students move into the system, because we've found that once they find a loving, welcoming school, pre-K 3, pre-K 4, and continue on, we keep them. They stay with us. So there's a lot of work to be done there. I don't disagree. We revamped our enrollment platform. We have to get organized and do it in a way that we haven't done in the past. I will say that one of the things we struggled with, and this is like a kind of a larger conversation, for the last 3 years, it's been urgent. Like the work around the important and the things that are truly gonna sustain us has been hard to execute because all these huge things, TA agreed order, budget, we think about the work around accountability. These are consuming massive resources, and it's all the same people. There are no more people doing this work. It's all our principals and executive directors and myself and our teams. So that is exactly where we want to go, and I agree with you. But I also want to say that it's the denominator, the total number of students in Austin has shifted. So yes, their capture and the number of students can increase, but the sheer number of students that are in Austin has changed. We have more density, but the density that we're seeing is, studios, it's 1-bedroom condominiums. You're not seeing lots of 3-bedroom and 2-bedroom units come online, and that's really where you see the student yield. And you're not seeing them in places that are affordable. That's just not happening. And so the reality is that you see charters closing. You see lots of, or you've seen closures in other surrounding school districts that have lots of wealth. It is truly a function of just affordability, but we need to do a better job of capturing and supporting our students who live here now. And I agree that we're not doing as good a job as we could. That is an area of focus for me. It's an area of intense focus, I would say, moving forward. I would say the reason I haven't been able to contribute a lot of time and energy into that space is because of like literally what we've been working through like for the last 24 to 36 months. It's been brutal. But yeah, that's what we're doing. And the goal is to like do these hard things, but do them together. You know, I gotta keep us together. That's like my #1 focus. It is hard. These changes are hard, but we're an incredible school district and we're doing incredible things. And I will not allow us to be Fort Worth. Like that's not happening. So, you know, I appreciate that comment and, you know, thanks for driving all over town. I know what that's like. It's brutal.
Okay, well, we do have our interpreters that are kind of winding down, so I want to be sure we get one of our Spanish speakers who wants to ask a question.
Buenas noches, señor Matías.
Hola, buenas noches.
Yo soy custodian de esta escuela de Blackshear. Estoy bien orgullosa de estar aquí. Tengo más de 9 años y todos los niños somos una familia. Ellos son felices cuando están aquí. Nosotros somos una familia y lo único que yo he escuchado de todos los padres es que no quieren que nos separen porque somos una familia.
Good evening, Matías. I am a custodian here. I've been here for 9 years, and we are a family. All the kids here know me, and we are very proud to be a family here. And everything that I hear from all the parents here is that we want to keep being a family and being a community.
Yeah, no, that's... Gracias. I mean, so for those of you that know me, I will say, and I will continue to say, that every single person in Austin ISD contributes to the educational experience of our students. And, you know, I would say that our custodians, our bus drivers, our food service workers are like the foundation of our school system. You know, you keep our students safe and have eyes and know them in a way that very few do, honestly, especially at our bigger schools. Our food service workers sometimes see 50-60% of the student population, and no other educator does that. And our bus drivers welcome our students, you know, when they may have had a really difficult day or night. And so I just want you to know, like, what you're doing here at Blackshear, que estás haciendo aquí at Blackshear, it's exactly what we want. We love you. I'm so happy that you're with us. You are part of what makes Blackshear a family. And just so thank you. Thank you. That's exactly what we want.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I have 2 kids here at Blackshear. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. I appreciate the work that the district has done. We've been following along. The plan we saw October 3rd was holistic and it was ambitious. And I think we all are on board with those goals. I think that fast and decisive action is a huge selling point. I know it makes it harder. It makes it harder for everyone to feel like they've had a voice, but change is painful. We want to get it done fast, right? And so I think a lot of the anxiety you're hearing from us around the possibility of a few years down the line moving campuses is based on wanting to embrace our new community and move forward. And you know, you talked about some of these other campuses moving back and forth, and we know it's doable. It's not ideal. And we know some of our families here are here because they didn't want to put their kids through going to Metz and Sanchez and back and forth. And so it really, you know, we've been very focused on getting more families, right? We want a bigger school. And I think every, you know, year, if not every month, that people have that uncertainty, it makes them choose something else, right? It makes them choose where they know their kid can stay. So I think that's one thing that we feel really strongly about is like we want, especially with the TAP, right? It's a challenge. We are very optimistic and confident in our teachers and our leadership team about our ability to succeed, but we really think that cloud overhanging of like a future move would really impede that success. You can tell like this school is old, but it's well maintained. Ms. Bell takes care of us. You see the beautiful mural behind you. That's an investment from the community in our campus. You walk past the school stage in our playground. These are the investments, you know, that the community has put into the school, and they're not easily moved. One thing that I really appreciate about the original plan is how holistic it was. And if the decision, if Oak Springs location was the historic campus that didn't need a turnaround plan when you were making that holistic plan, it would look different. And so it's really hard to think about would the Blackshear moving to Oak Springs fit into that, be the plan if that was your starting point, right? For example, the campus rebuild, as I understand it, the target enrollment was like 375, which is not the same as what you said, a standard elementary school campus. So when we talk about operating efficient schools, they're a little bit bigger. And our arts programming, you know, we have space for that, and that's really important to our community, and it's been really successful in helping us be a thriving campus on the east side that's been attracting and keeping people in the district and even drawing people from other districts. So I guess that's not all a question, but I wanted to thank you really for the work. We appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. We appreciate you listening to Oak Springs. And I want you to know that our community is not only excited to welcome Oak Springs, like we're actively having WhatsApp conversations about can we move our pickup soccer game and like meet new friends, right? And like start building those relationships. So thank you.
Me again. I do have a comment because I'm looking at a TEA score, and so I'm looking at 23 for Blackshear. For relative performance, the school got a C. For closing the gap, it got an F. That's it. What's the other one? For 24, reliable performance, economically disadvantaged, and this was for 23 as well. There was an F. For closing the gap, there was a D. I may have said the same thing. For, okay, let me go to 25, so I'm sorry, you all. I thought I had it in order.
Do you want Principal to answer?
No, I need you to answer. I don't need
No,
the
not
principal.
answer, like get the numbers so you don't have to pull them up.
No, I have it. Okay. And so for 25, the relative performance for economically disadvantaged was a D, and for closing the gap was a D. And so my question is, because let me preface this first. First of all, I attended Oak Springs to 3rd grade because it went from kinder to 3. We stayed in Glen Oak, which is underneath Pleasant Valley, the bridge in that area. With urban renewal, we moved on Angelina. And so I was here at Blackshear for 2 years. And so you're right. There's a lot of history at that school because not only did I attend Blackshear, so did my mother, and so did my grandmother when it was Gregorytown School. So there's a lot of history here, and my grandmother was born in 1899, okay? So there's a lot of history here. The reason I read the scores, the grade, is because we're bringing Oak Springs over. And so we know that their grades for economically disadvantaged is probably similar to Blackshear. So my question is, how, because I'm having a hard time trying to see how we are really trying to lift up academics for students. I'm really trying to grasp it because I honestly believe you have a good heart. I really do. I believe you're a good person. I believe you mean well. However, I'm just not getting that piece. So you can bring them over. They're going to consolidate with what's here right now. And the resources are going to do what? Because I don't expect the school to go from a C to an F. I don't expect it to go from a C to a D. It can go from a C to a B. It can go from a C to an A. But it cannot decline. And then I have one more thing. Because Burnett, Webb, and Dobie did a restart, could you not do a restart with Oak Springs? Because you don't know as of yet what their score is going to be. You could do a restart as well.
Yeah, so I'll start with the last question first. There are multiple things that we're having to address at the same time. And Ms. Bradley, we've had conversations around, accountability, seats, feeder pattern alignment, transfer policies, like all the things. The reality of it all is that there are empty seats in this area. And could you restart Oak Springs? You could. A restart, for those who don't know, I think maybe I said in the beginning, is you turn over the principal most likely because the principal has to have demonstrated the ability to move a school from a D to a B or an F to a C. The educators have to be 60% highly effective. Again, that's the state term, not Matthias's term. And that includes elements of an ACE model. So ACE is really what they refer to now as a restart. The state changed the kind of the verbiage that they use. And so you want to have typically 3 years of experience. Your outcomes have to be correlated to your performance, or be TIA designated, or be a nationally board certified teacher, which means that all the other staff, we'd have to evaluate who's there now, see who could stay, because the state won't allow us to submit a plan that doesn't meet that criteria. And then we would have to hire staff that met that criteria and place them in Oak Springs. And so could that be done? It could be done. The challenge that we have is, when we look at comprehensive plans, which is what we're trying to do as a school system, you still have excess seats. And so in the event where you can solve multiple challenges with a solution, we aim to do that. And so you could restart it, but you would still have the same number of seats met across this area. And again, right now, we can't afford to give every student what they need. And so we're trying to find, where can we find these efficiencies so that over time we can get there. So as far as academic performance, there are lots of things that contribute to a school's accountability rating. Y'all know that it changed in 22 to 23. We saw significant shifts. We saw shifts here in 22, 23. There's a huge downward shift. We've seen 20-point swings in some areas because of how the assessment just changed. We had, I forgot how many B schools that went to Fs, but I think it was 16. So there's a lot of movement. So 23, 24, and 25, when you think about what we're going to do, well, first, we're going to really look and make sure that all the students have the resources they need. We make sure we're going to add content interventionists, we're going to add instructional coaches. One of the things that we're also likely to be doing is adding an assistant principal. When you bring the student populations together, you need to provide more support. Assistant principals typically are the kind of the partner to the principal who's overseeing special education, making sure our ARDs and IEPs. So we're providing more support. We then look at the school as a whole and work with each school community and say, what do we need to add as far as wraparound services? We know that students in parts of Austin need more, not just what's in the classroom. I think there was a comment around after-school care. We make those adjustments. So we have a framework for all of it. We've allocated funds for all of it. The rigor, the way that we assess and track performance. So assessments throughout the year, making sure that we're very clear and that we see the rigor in the classroom. Because at the end of the day, we have to have high expectations for our students. Doesn't matter the color of your skin, you have to have high expectations, and the rigor better match. I can tell you that I've dissected schools in Austin ISD, and I look at, and they'll tell me, Matthias, we're going to get a C, Matthias, we're going to get a C, and I look into the data, and I realize once I get into it that the rigor for Campus A versus Campus B, which is reflected in the material that the students are completing, is very different, very different. And so that type of autonomy hurts us because you get to a place where you are bringing the expectation down to meet the student's ability instead of doing what's required as far as interventions and the supports to meet the rigor that we have to have. So that's a big point of frustration for me. It's a big, really point of disappointment for me, like managing the school system. We've been here for a long time, but we've adapted bad habits in some cases. The problem is that whenever you create that baseline foundation, the argument against it is that you're taking away autonomy from a school, because autonomy is something that lots of schools like to have. So we are building off the great things that are already happening here at Blackshear, providing additional supports, working with both school communities, working with the principal to ensure what is the academic plan going to be specifically to welcome the students, and then we've committed budget items to ensure that we actually resource it and get it done. It'll move. There is no doubt in my mind. I do expect it to increase. I'm not going to be part of a system that is not moving us in the right direction. So that's how we would do it. And all of that's kind of laid out. The other thing that's been really helpful for us is we've actually partnered with a technical partner, and we've created lighthouses and observation schools. And so what this is we as a school district over the last year have changed our approach in how we support instruction. Our principals need to be the academic leaders in the school, right? What was happening in years past, and I don't want to belabor this, but we would take our teachers and we'd take them all to central office, or we would take them to a place and we provide professional development. And then they would go and they would instruct and they would align their instruction with the curriculum. But what wasn't happening was the coaching kind of in real time, because the principal wasn't always getting that same professional development and support. And that created a huge impact in our system. So now, as your principal can tell you, is that we have been really intentional in ensuring that our principals are the instructional leaders of their campus. So when they're observing, when they're having conversations, they're always thinking about what can I do to ensure that this student gets what they need to be successful. And that's something we flipped on its head. It wasn't like that 2 years ago. It is a complete shift, and it's working. It's working very, very well. So that's why it's really important that we all come together with the leadership here and build that plan together. But again, we have tools. Sorry, I'm digressing. Back to the lighthouse and laboratory lab schools. So what we're doing here is we're having one school be the lighthouse school, and then have 6 schools around it. And we do instructional rounds where we go and observe. And it's not staff, it's principals. We get principals together and say, hey, what is happening in this school? Let's go have a conversation. Let's talk about what we saw, what we didn't see. Let's break it down, and then let's kind of go back to our own schools and then come back in that sharing model throughout the year. It's proven to be very successful. That's why you're seeing early literacy and early numeracy numbers move the way that they are. And they're moving quicker in areas where we have higher numbers of students who've been historically underserved. Because my argument is that you can have high-performing schools, but they're performing in spite of the instruction that's occurring in the classroom. And you see that in parts of town because the students already come in on grade level, right? What we need to demonstrate is growth, that our students are getting on grade level and growing, no matter if they're coming in on grade level and they need to go grow beyond it, or they're coming below it and to get back on and then grow. So our approach is very, very different than what we've been doing the last 2 years, actually the last 3 years. The principals and, Jennifer Pace and others can speak to it probably better than I can, but we're doing a lot differently, and that's what I expect to happen here. We'll break it for sure. I'm very confident we'll break it. People ask me all the time, do you feel like this plan will de-risk the school district? I think it would for a variety of reasons, whether it's budget, accountability, allow us to allocate more resources to special education. So I am confident that it would move us in the right direction, holistically. Still gotta do the boundaries, which we're gonna get done, and it's not gonna take forever, I promise you. That is gonna happen. So anyway, thank you,
Okay.
Cheryl.
Well, we are quite a bit over time, and I want to respect everyone so y'all can get to bedtimes and dinners and all of the things. So I don't know if you have anything else. You've said a lot tonight, so I think we may be okay, but in case y'all want anything. Okay.
Just
All right.
thank y'all.
Thank y'all so much. I appreciate it.